Rail Up, the future mobility podcast with innovators and leaders of the ecosystem. Presented by Sebastian Sperker.
Welcome to the brand new episode of Rail Up, where innovation meets the future of rail industry. Today we're diving into a true story of serendipity, how an unexpected discovery in the Swiss city of Bern is transforming noisy tram networks into silent, smart and sustainable systems. Our guests, Bernhard, Frei and Felix Saur from PROSE, take us behind the scenes of this groundbreaking project, one that's redefining what urban mobility can sound like, or rather not sound like. So let's get started and connect to the world's leading rail country, to Switzerland. Hi Felix and hi Bernhard for the new episode of Rail Up. And yeah, as the audience knows, we start the podcast on the session always with the same question. So may I start with you, Bernhard? So would you describe yourself rather an innovator or a leader?
Well, let me answer in a Swiss way, an innovation leader, meaning I understood early in life that innovation needs a full set of capabilities, which I only own a few. Thus, I made myself develop distinct social capabilities to inspire mostly and convince stakeholders that help me to innovate accordingly. Be that Milka Caramel, which you may know, high voltage connectors, or market entry with New York Metro, where I did a big project, or what we discussed today, the Bern project.
And what about you, Felix? You see yourself an innovator or a leader?
I see myself clearly as an innovator, as I'm more on the technical side, and I'd like to challenge myself, and I'd like to analyze complex problems and find a solution. So that's why I'm describing myself as an innovator.
Let's start our episode, and today we're going to talk about a project that perfectly illustrates a great business story of serendipity. It all started with a problem that needed to be solved, and along the way a series of discovery emerged that might well shape the future of the rail ecosystem. So let's dive into the moment and let's explore the Bern project.
Well, it all started with COVID, because COVID was a major disruption to our sales channel, which basically based on personal networks. And with COVID, we were like intercepted to the customers, since all were working at home and we were not allowed to travel. So we needed a different approach to get to customers. And we developed something with the help of MIT, the Valhalla of engineers in America, and an ecosystem innovation approach where we defined in a like a pentagram the problem statement, the solution, the funding, and the resources for the customer. So we did not any longer just interconnect with or intermingle with customers in terms of I'm asking for problems and finding solutions, the engineering way, but we went to a customer and said, we believe you got this problem. We may have a solution. And by the way, we could also organize funding as well as resources and knowledge to solve this problem for you. Are you interested?
So you approached a customer and offered him to solve a problem that he was not aware that this can be solved, right?
Yes.
Okay.
And that would have had technological reasons because he didn't know how to solve it, or monetary reasons because he had no funding, or whatever the problem, the spirit problem here. And here, when discussing about serendipity, the solution to what Felix will describe afterwards from a technological point of view, the noise that a tram creates in a town when traveling around, was solved, or has been an industry problem since like 50, 60 years. And we solved that by understanding every single tram as a worker bee. But working like in a hive, working individually, but for the bee colony as a whole, and always communicating intensively with each other. And that was possible due to the application of artificial intelligence and modern communication means we got only recently.
In the city of Bern, there are trams running, and whenever these trams pass through a curve, I think everyone living in the city knows that this generates a certain kind of a noise. And this noise is not very pleasant for the people living nearby, especially for those whose homes are close to the tracks. Felix, can you just tell us a little bit more what AI and which technology helped you to solve the problem?
Sure. So the major task of the project in Bern was to solve to have a solution for the squealing noises that are happening in cars, and this noise is a very common problem in the railway industry, especially for tramways. So what we did is, like, we were integrating a autonomous acoustic measurement system into a part of the fleet of the Bernmobile fleet, like 15 tramways, and these trams are collecting more or less the acoustic signals during regular operation. They send this information to a cloud, and these audio signals are located because we have also integrated GPS measurements, and we are also feeding or collecting the meteorological data. So if it's raining, the temperature and so on. And based on all these data sets, which were fed to a machine learning model, the machine learning could determine when the squealing is happening before it actually happens. So what we are now doing is we let the AI decide when there's lubrication needed on the track. And with this approach, we can solve the noise problems before they're actually occurring. And this summer, we did a final measurement campaign to validate the system. And it turned out that we could reduce this noise coming from the squealing about 98%. So it's more or less completely eliminated.
Okay, wow. And as we discussed earlier, the solution is basically to apply a small amount of oil to the tracks so that the trams run more smoothly. That's more or less the physical principle behind. And what you're doing now is that even before the noise occurs, you already know where to apply the oil on a specific section of the tracks in order to prevent this noise from happening in the future, right?
Exactly. So the squealing is coming from a self-excitation of the wheel-rail contact. And by putting lubrication on the track, we can solve this problem on the source, you can say. And the main part, because this is safety related, is so far these lubrication systems are more or less steered. They are not controlled. So there might be some occasions where you put too much lubrication on the track. For instance, if it's raining. If it's raining, the track is lubricated naturally by the rain, just by having a wet rail. So we don't need any lubricant. But having very dry rails, we need more lubrication. So with this system, we can avoid the noise, but also reduce the lubrication or amount of lubrication needed to prevent this from happening. So we have also, beside the reduction of the noise, we also have a huge benefit on the safety side, which is one of the main impacts that is already visible for the operator.
But you will not equip the entire fleet and just some of the vehicles, right?
Exactly. Every tram is knowing what the other trams that have this instrumentation on it. We have like a swarm intelligence. So the information is collected over the part of the fleet that has this instrumentation ready. And with this, we can have just a third or half of the fleet equipped, and it's solving more or less all the problems. It's a bit more complex in the reality because we have some lines, some operation lines that are just primarily used with one type of the vehicle. And if this type of vehicle has not the instrumentation on it, then more or less we are more or less blind on this line. But if the vehicles are more kind of distributed over the whole network, then we just need around 1/3 of the vehicles equipped with this measurement system.
How many different types of equipped trams are in the fleet?
Actually, we just have two kind of vehicles. We have one set which have these are the 15 trams that have this instrumentation on it, and the rest of the fleet is just standard regular trams without any intelligence running on it. But they do lubricate like in a steered way, like time-based or location-based.
Okay, yes. And now, whenever the sensor detects that a noise might occur, they send the information to the next equipped tram, indicating that when it passes the specific section, it should apply a precise amount of oil calculated based on factors such as the weather conditions onto the tracks. And as a result, about 98% of all noise occurrences are eliminated.
Yes, so it's a bit more complex. So we have multiple input parameters. So one is, for instance, the operator itself can determine if there should be a very high frequency of lubrication because some important person living close to this curve or whatever. Then the second one is that we are actually using the weather forecast for the prediction. So this is a prognostic approach. So we actually putting lubricant on the track exactly at the point when the noise is starting to appear. And then the third one is, it's actually the methodology you were talking about, is a reactive system that if this prognostic is not like working properly, then the system detects that there was some squealing happening on the track. And then over the swarm intelligence, the next tramway coming by is putting the lubricant on this exact location.
Perfect. And basically Bern is now in silence in terms of
Silent city.
Silent city.
Yes. On the part where this intelligence is running, then it's really quiet, and all the complaints have been solved more or less from one day on the other.
Okay, and make sure when you can do it in Bern, you can do it in Zurich, you can do it in Berlin, in Vienna, in Paris, in London, and wherever trams are.
That's what we'd like to do.
And what was the greatest challenge for you faced in this project?
At the beginning, it was creating ownership at the Bernmobil side. Make them understand that we are on a path to a disruptive step in solving an industry-wide problem. They were not able to understand the magnificence of the solution and what impact that would have at the very beginning. And during the project, mainly the proactive management of all stakeholders, because there's a lot of stakeholders involved and you got to keep them in your sack. And that's not easy because everyone has their individual interests. It's very political. There's a lot of money involved. So all are pulling in that direction. And at the end, recently, in September and October and beginning of October now, the main challenge was now jumping from this innovation funding that we got to install the POC, and now jumping to an industrialization of that service. Not proprietarily, not one single product, but to deliver something that would be able to solve the problem for the whole industry and not just for Bernmobil.
And I mean, like, I'm just thinking about, like, even for the whole, like, future produced tram sets, right? Because maybe it will be like a standard part already when you got to the tram, right? So that's
definitely.
And we started with the serendipity moment, and actually, when did you realize actually that this technology, because like you go even more far instead of just the trams, right? When was the moment you really realized, okay, we can apply this in Bern, we can apply this everywhere, and basically when it's working for trams, it might also working on freight wagons as well, because what you're doing is basically you're reading the noise pattern, putting it together with data, location, with weather, whatever, and then you make out of this data set, you're just creating some prediction, right? And this is something, it's not limited to trams and cities. So, and when was this moment when you said, wow, that's basically much, much more than we thought?
Well, I think it started very early on. So as soon as I got the data and I started to understand, especially the acoustic data, and I could somehow correlate some certain frequencies, patterns, clusters in the spectrogram, I was able to somehow correlate this to certain physical behavior of the train. For instance, I could determine by a certain frequency that is changing on how the life of the wheel is changing. So if the frequency changes, I see that the life cycle of the wheel is getting to an end. And Another example is by some combination of frequency, I can see where the contact point in lateral direction is orientated at the moment. So as soon as I started to understand the data, I was seeing, okay, there's a large amount of information we can extract from the acoustics. And I was realizing that we get an acoustic fingerprint of each kind of vehicle. So we have a typical fingerprint that is coming from the tramways in Bern. I tested the signal for a freight wagon, then or passenger car. Then I see, okay, it has a different kind of fingerprint, but the mechanical behavior, the wheel-way contact kinematics are more or less physically the same. It just needs the understanding is the same. You just need to adapt the fingerprint to some physical phenomena. And as soon as I realized it, I started to use or collect use cases. And then I realized, okay, what we have achieved here is pretty significant in terms of outcome we could produce.
I mean, that's really a cool story. What I also liked, in order to get the acoustic noises, you need a microphone. And basically, I think you tested a lot of microphones. Which microphone at the end of the day was the best one for this application?
As soon as I understood that there's a high potential and I would like to have a system on each train, then I tried we need to reduce the costs of the microphone. And we started with a microphone that is more or less dedicated to detecting squealing. So it costs right 1,000 euros. Then we downgraded it to studio level, which is like 100 euros. And now we are on a technology that is more or less used in every smartphone for like 5 to 10 euros. And the outcome is the same. So we don't need high or very expensive microphones to get the maximum out of the audio signal. We just need a robust microphone that is working during summer, winter, all temperature ranges, all humidity ranges, and that is on a good location with below the train, more or less, inside the bogie. So this is much more important than a high precision microphone.
Yeah, so I think that's really also like a learning and encouraging. So it's not always that the most expensive is the best one. So even like on the other range, the cheapest will fulfill the same. Let's jump because you working for PROSE, and can you give us a little bit about key challenges what PROSing is addressing today, and talk about a little bit about PROSE?
Yeah, indeed. Deindustrialization in Europe is a big issue for us. Since on the OEM side, on the original equipment manufacturer, the train car builders there's a huge customer portfolio concentration there, which means for us as a engineering service provider, this is a huge downgrade, since nobody's needing us anymore as an engineering company. So we're in the middle of a transformation from an engineering company to a consulting office. And while we're working globally, we do focus on specific markets, since China is no market for us anymore. They have learned from us in Europe on how to build trains, and they are good enough or better already in producing trains than we are. And soon they will conquer Europe like they did with the solar energy or the electric cars that are now flooding our market. So that's a big issue for us to take our experts that were used to do engineering for 40 years and change them to consulting experts.
So you started as an engineering company, and now you are more or less getting to a consultant company. And what are the lighthouse projects you're currently working on?
Well, for our Austrian listeners, maybe this one would be very interesting, since we are developing modular night train solution concepts for the French ministry. Since the Austrian Railways were very much involved in night trains after COVID, and now slowly passing off that business. The French ministry got interested in this business, and so we're doing a lot of solution concepts for them. Additionally, there's a lot of happening now with the digital automatic coupling in freight trains in Switzerland. We were blessed with a state funding, a very generous state funding from the Swiss government. So we are able to start to develop the implementation of the digital automatic coupling in freight trains, beginning here in Switzerland. And from an European perspective, Hyperloop is a big issue since our engineers some decades ago developed the maglev technology and implemented that in Shanghai. We got a lot of know-how for this kind of solutions with regards to high speed under special conditions.
But you're working also currently like on a Hyperloop project?
We support in engineering almost all Hyperloop initiatives worldwide. There's like 5 or 6 different initiatives running, some funded in America, some in Switzerland, some in Europe. And we support in consulting and engineering almost everyone. Yes.
Because we already had like Andres de Leon from Hyperloop TT in the podcast. So you're also cooperating with them?
Yes, indeed.
So that's the network in the back.
Based on the Bernmobile project, I see a lot of future lighthouse projects that are perhaps coming to PROSE and can be solved by PROSE. And it's mainly going into the direction to increase safety, increase efficiency, reduce noise, reduce wear, and more or less all with the help of data and artificial intelligence.
You already had some buzzwords like safety, like innovation, etc. And if you look generally on the rail sector, I mean, you're deeply involved. What is your view? Because are we in Europe like really on the right track with the current development in rail in Europe?
Well, there is this view from Switzerland looking to the rest of Europe with regards to what is happening differently in Switzerland versus the big Europe around us. And the main difference I see with regards to the differences is that in Switzerland we try to integrate instead of forcing competition. So we got this clock face, Taktfahrplan scheduling since like 20 years. We integrate all operators in the same schedule. So it's more like working together instead of creating artificial competition with regards to the European normatation. And the political and societal support that we experience in Switzerland is way different than what I learned in Germany, for example, where Deutsche Bahn is bashed for everything that has happened negatively in Germany. And financing has never been and is no issue in Switzerland because there's so much societal support that there's, macroeconomically speaking, enough money available to transport this mobility industry into the future. The issue we face in Switzerland is due to the small spaces that we have a modal split issue that we need to get very much better, and we will discuss that later, I think, to force ourselves as a macro environment to push as many traffic possible, personally and freight, into train and away from the street because there's not enough room available for everybody passing through Switzerland.
What is your opinion, Felix?
I would say it's very hard to bring innovative solutions into the railway market, as it's a very traditional sector. And for instance, if we talk about self-driving taxis, which are more or less regular in California, but we don't get it on the train with ATO, so self-driving trams. It's on metros. It's common, but if we look that more or less the train is operating on a secured network, for me it's I just can understand why we can't get this done, this ATO stuff. So this is one example of, I think the rail industry is a bit shy of having innovations, and this is actually something we experience with the Bernmobile project. So there's no high acceptance for having a artificial intelligence that is automatically active controlling the lubrication system on board. And if we're going more on this path and look into the future, what could be done with artificial intelligence, I think the acceptance is not there yet. And I think we need to get there to get more effective and to use more what is available with the digitalization to increase the benefits of the railway market.
That's right. Already in the 90s, the first metro in France operated with Gore Level 4, and also in Australia, the famous Autohol of the iron ore trains are running autonomous since almost 1 decade. So that's not really new, but I would say very rare. But within the podcast, we would like to change that actually. And for our audience from outside Europe, Switzerland is seen as the benchmark when it comes to the quality and comfort in rail mobility. And you mentioned it before, Bernhard, that the society wants to see investments to the rail sector to remain on this high quality in Switzerland. So it's could seen as a different mindset, and we often heard in the phrases, you need the right mindset to enable innovation. So what's your take on that?
Well, it depends on the flight level. When we come back to the Bernmobile project, we experienced a very difficult shift in mindset when the sponsors on customer side, on the Bernmobile side, retired, and then new people came in and needed some time to understand the huge disruptive step that we're doing with this project and face it and get confidence it, so that from a political point of view, they would stand with us and fight with us to get this project going. And this is something that shifts with persons, and that's very dangerous for innovation, because it's very personalized and it shouldn't be. Since within this train business industry, we are in a very old industry.
200 years.
200 years, and with that we got a very strong corset of norms and behavior and comme il faut, like the French would say, and this hinders us to overstep ourselves in terms of innovation.
Yeah, and I think that's what we really heard quite often, like also in the podcast already. It's like that we focus in just on 2 major projects. That's the DAC and this ETCS, yeah, and basically no left and no right, and basically, but these 2 projects will not solve everything, yeah, and we have to be much more open, really, to think about new way of thinking it, because since this project was started, also like a couple of years are and technology involved much more. But Mr. Technology, Felix, what is your take on the mindset passion question?
For me, the most important thing is openness. So open to new ideas and to be willing to do failures. Because I mean, now we are talking about the success we get out of the Bernmobile project, but at the beginning it could also have be a big failure. There was the potential that this is not going to get a successful story. It could have a huge failure with a slightly amount of invest that is failed, was thrown out of the window, the money. And now luckily it has been the case, but so for me to be ready to do failures is one kind of approach on how we get innovative ideas into reality.
What could be key skill sets for the future, also for the rail industry?
I think we need competences to the area of digitalization, whether it's artificial intelligence, whether it's handling signals, whether it's communication. And this is the one side. And on the other side, I think it's also very important to not lose the experience of very experienced people that are or were working in the railway business for like 30, 40, 50 years, which are now more getting into another phase of their life. And so it's not acceptable that we lose this kind of experience in terms of perhaps sometimes why there is some system like it is today. So they could explain it, and we really need to suck this knowledge and transfer this knowledge from this perhaps past generation to the next one. So this shift needs to be done. So we need new competences, but we also need to like recycle the old competences that are existing.
And I think, like we already mentioned, most of the new rail tech companies probably have half of the people are software engineers already. So in this whole heavy metal industry, that's really shifting. It's still about heavy metal, but now it's also becoming kind of a software business. And I really think that even infrastructure manager will go more and more in that direction over time. If we talk about ATO, for example, because in the long run, they are basically steering the trains or the wagon themselves. And just to think about the workshops, I mean, 20 years ago, there wasn't a single software or electric guy around. And now with the sensor, battery packs, hydrogen systems, and all that stuff, suddenly you need quite a few of them. And actually, that brings me to my next question, because I really like to ask, what keeps you passionate about working in this industry? Because, you could easily go to a big digital company for far, far, far away from rail, but something maybe even more innovative. So what keeps you, Felix, motivated to push through those frustrating moments in rail?
So for me, the rail industry is more or less the sustainable way of transport. So it's the most eco-friendly way to get from A to B. Working in this industry, try to improve, try to help customers, operators in this industry is a very nice feeling that I will have always a good sleep in the night. If I compared, for instance, with the defense industry, I would have struggled perhaps to get to sleep because I build weapons or whatever. So for me, it's a very nice industry. Even it's lacking a bit of ambition in terms of innovation, but I think perhaps this is exactly where it needs smart engineers to get this step ahead.
And we won't say that you're actually sitting at the airport. Okay, and Bernhard, what keeps you motivated?
Well, that has a lot to do with my past, with my history. But all my life I was working for very strong brands, and this feels like home, because you can talk to everybody and everybody knows where you are. Everybody has an opinion to that. Was it Milka? Was it Liebherr? Is it now railway industry? Even if you remember, Sebastian, when we first met, it took us 5 minutes, and then we knew since we two didn't know each other, but we know someone, you know someone, and it's a small family, and it feels home wherever you go. That's super cool. And and last, even in my work as an innovation leader, when we have another idea that we know that will collide with the norms and standards of our very old industry, I can go to Ittingen, which is a small village just next to Bern, where the Federal Office of Transport is located. I can ring at the door, go to the specialist and say, I got this idea. Would you help me? And they say yes. So you got a federal office that is not understanding itself as something blocking or regulating, but assisting you in getting forward for the sake of both. And that is something very, very motivating. And I experienced that very differently in Austria, where I came from. So this is something that this understanding from a federal office that they're here to support is something fantastic.
Felix, maybe a good question for you and then also for Bernhard. So which technology will have the biggest impact on rail in the upcoming years? And we make the game, don't say AI.
Next question, please. No, I think not everything can be solved by AI, and I want to make this very clear. We always need engineers. We will always need the guys in the workshop. I read the comment the last week that one of the jobs that AI will not replace is the plumber.
Yeah.
So the guy is really working. So I think this is true. I think that and this is what I experienced myself. What AI is really replacing is the software guys, the guys who do the code. But because now you can say the AI, I want to have a code for this and this, and this code should do this and this, and it gives you like 1,000 lines of code in a perfect, nice way. So you couldn't have done it any better, and you save like a day of work. So it's not everything is based on AI, but I see the data is getting more and more important. So we're talking about assets in a way, like an asset is a freight train or a train itself. But for me, actually, a very important asset of the future will be data. So that we really know what is the condition of a vehicle, where is the vehicle, how fast is it going? Is there a tendency to a fracture or whatever? So for me, data is very important, that we need the technology to somehow consume the data. So AI is one possibility to consume the data and to convert data into information and to knowledge. That helps us. So the digitalization itself, that is one where data is a part of, is actually for me the technology itself. And there are various ways to use to get the benefit from the digitalization itself. AI is one of them, but there are also other possibilities. But for me, it's the generation of data that is trying to do anything good for the system itself. So I hear a lot of talks about preventive maintenance, but it's actually that the basis for it is data, and I actually don't see enough data at the moment that is available to get there.
I'm still looking for really a predictive maintenance case, which is really from the beginning till the end, really digitalized. I'm still
exactly.
So if you have one, tell me.
Yeah, the main problem is I have a lot of use cases, but it's always single use cases. So they have one data source that are coming to one specific part or component that can be used longer or that is prevented from failure. But there's no whole approach. And I think the problem is that there's no combination between different data sources. So every use case has its single data platform, and these platforms are not communicating to each other. So there's no ecosystem. Let's call it this way.
As long as the guys from Palantir come and put this data together, which we just learned 3 episodes ago. And Bernhard, what is your take on that? Which technology will be one of the most important in the upcoming years, decades?
On the one hand, we got technological breakthrough just in front of us with digitalization in general. Not only on the technological point of view, but also from a business ecologic point of view. So real digitalization disrupting business models that would kill operators, for example, because being an operator, you would manage assets, the timetable, and the personnel. And if with digitalization the personnel is gone due to automatic trains operation, with the timetable that is now, even in Switzerland now, starting Google doing the timetable and doing it better than the actual timetable of Swiss Railways is doing. And since there will be no state funding available for buying assets will be bought by big financial corporations. So if all 3 raisons d'être, the operators are gone, where are the operators? Nowhere. And that's a major shift. Same with the OEMs. We too, the 3 of us, we will see in a very short time that the railway industry in Europe will be vanished. like it has happened with the solar industry, like it's happening now with the automotive industry. We are on the brink of getting wiped out as an industry in terms of producing, because the Chinese are just waiting for the door to get opened. And on the same time, Europe is getting very old. The experienced workers that Felix mentioned that are so important for our industry, they're getting retired. They're gone. And so digitalization is not just something technologically fancy that is approaching. It's a necessity, because otherwise we would not be able to do that in future.
I think that we will face a major transformation when it comes to what will be the future role of a railway undertaking. Exactly, because the operator basically, I think there and just having in mind, it will change the entire system, right? It's very unlikely, or not a lot of companies are really now preparing for this huge step, yeah. But I also believe that it will come. Yeah, I hope not that you doom a perspective in terms of industry if Europe will come, but at least what we see in the automotive sector and others, that we are at the moment really facing big difficulties, and our whole society is basically built on these industries, right? So I think it will get to a society topic at the end of the day. And then it's a much broader one than to railway. Okay, Felix. So what is your take on how the future of railway look like? What if you envision 20 years ahead?
My first wish would be that we could shift as many passengers and freights to the rail, from the road to the rail. Bernhard has mentioned it before. For instance, in Switzerland, it's a highly populated area. So we have a lot of people living on a small area of room. There's not much space available. So we can't always build another line on the railway, on the street. So it will not fix the problem. So we need to be more efficient, and we need to get everything that is available from the road to the rail network. So I think this is something I would wish, and I think we need to get the rail industry ready for this shift. So if we are not ready, then the shift will not happen. So this would be my wish, that with the help of, as I mentioned a few times before, with the digitalization, we can have a big shift and a big impact into the efficiency. Like you mentioned, ETCS. So perhaps we are able to have more trains running very close to each other. So we can really use the infrastructure, that we have a high reliability of the rolling stock, so there are no failures on the track. And I think this is my wish for the future.
Yeah, that's really bold and motivating closing words for this RAILUP episode. Thank you very much for being part of the RAILUP journey, and welcome to the RAILUP Club.
Thank you. Thank you, Sebastian.
Thanks for having us. Thank you.
What is the contribution to drive climate change?
We can contribute to climate change in increasing the modal split away from the street to our industry, because our industry, the railway industry, is the most clean, most green, most efficient way of transportation.
The ball is in your court. What is the next step to drive change?
Well, for me, is completely fully using all available digitalization methods, whether it's AI, whether it's data available, whether it's ATO, whether it's ECTS. I think we need to upgrade everything to the max available according to the standards. And then we are ready for the next step.
Less beton, more intelligence. Because for every single Swiss franc or euro we invest in capex for infrastructure, beton, we need 7 additional Swiss francs to maintain them. And in future, as a European macroeconomy, we won't have the budget to do that. So we need to do a major shift away from beton to intelligence.
Which superhero do we need to avoid the climate disaster?
I would say Flash, because we need to act fast.
Captain Modal Shift, whose superpower is pulling people and goods off roads and planes onto clean, electrified rail faster than carbon can destroy the planet.
What's the takeaway from this episode?
My key takeaway from this episode is that serendipity truly happens in rail as well. COVID forced many companies to rethink their business models, and PROSE showed how a proactive approach to a customer can lead to the transformation of an entire city, turning Bern's tram network into a quiet, smarter system. I was impressed by how early Felix recognized the potential of combining acoustic sensing, GPS and weather data, a combination that can change the rail ecosystem in terms of safety, efficiency and sustainability. We also learned that innovation doesn't always depend on the most expensive equipment and that stakeholder management can be one of the greatest challenges even when you have a brilliant idea. But what inspired me most is the pro-rail attitude within the Swiss society, an environment that enables innovation and shapes the rail ecosystem in a forward-thinking way. Because in the end, it's the people behind these ideas who drive change, and that's exactly the spirit of Rail Up.
This podcast connects innovators and leaders worldwide to shape the future ecosystem of rail. Rail Up by Sebastian Sperker.